What's up, everybody? It's Justin. A couple minutes late. Again, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm still trying to figure out the best way to set this whole thing up with the lights and the computers and the screens and the erasers and the markers and the whole shebang, right? It gets a little bit tricky, but that's okay. We're here. We made it. It's AMA week. Well, AMA day. There's an AMA every week. It's week number 29. That's a long, long time. Let me do my normal things. I gotta refresh my screen over here, make sure that my computer's telling me that I'm live, that I can see myself, that I can see you guys, that I can see your comments, that we can have an exciting time, right? Hooray! All right, let's check here. Yes, it's telling me that I'm live. Okay, click for more, mute my computer so you guys can't hear my speakers. That's not a good thing. What's up, Jessica? What's up, Lindsay? What's up, Tiffany? What's up, everybody? How you doing? There's a lot more people than I can see. Let me see. Yeah, there's a lot of you. Okay, awesome. Welcome, guys. This is AMA number 29. I'm super excited about this one. I'm super excited. I'm also a little bit nervous because there's a lot to unpack as usual, and I don't know if I can cram it all in an hour, hour and a half. We're gonna see how it goes. I might talk fast. There's some science in this one. It's just all around a little bit tricky. Let me check one thing. Okay, just a second. Okay, there we go. Just had to make sure that my computer was plugged in so it doesn't die on you in the middle, because that would be awful, okay? So this is AMA number 29. What is AMA number 29 about? I am calling it Clovis Is Not Keto, because it's not. I'm so excited about this episode. I'm so excited because I've been dealing with this with Clovis since day one. Literally, I'm going to cite a direct quote from AMA number 1, okay? When we were talking about keto way back then. 29 weeks ago when I was 14 years old. Craziness, okay? First things first, it's AMA time. Where do I get the questions for the AMA? Generally speaking, I pull topics for AMAs from the Clovis Academy. That is the free private Facebook group. Then I have I Am Clovis, which is members only. I have Clovis Kids, which is members only. The Clovis Academy has over 1,070 members. What in the hell is happening? This is crazy, right? 1,070 members. Can't be wrong. That means this Justin Nault guy probably knows a thing or two about some stuff. I don't know, just guessing, could be. But anyway, I Am Clovis has over 100 members. Clovis Kids has 70 plus members and over 100 kids in there. We're doing contests and giveaways, all sorts of stuff. So if you're not in there, get in there. Let's jump in, because I was a couple minutes late again. So let's talk about AMA number 29. Tonight, I am talking all about pet peeves. This is basically a pet peeves episode. It's a personal one for me. I just wanted to take a week to clear some of these pet peeves, to deal with a couple of myths, to deal with some things that drive me a little bit crazy, even with people who have been in the Clovis fold for a long time. And I understand where the confusion comes from. It's a little bit tricky, so we're gonna talk about the details, right? This one's personal, my pet peeves. Pet peeve number 1, calling Clovis keto. This happens everywhere, all the time. And I went through this in AMA number 27, okay? So I'm gonna cite a couple of AMAs here, because there's a few AMAs that you're gonna need to go back and rewatch or listen to on the podcast, because I've already covered some things in depth. AMA number 27, I talk about camps. We don't fit into any camps. I don't plan on fitting into a camp anytime soon, and I don't care that people want me to fit into camps, right? I don't care who wants an explanation. Well, it's gotta be, is it keto? Is it keto, but what is it? But is it paleo? But is it keto? But is it carnivore? What is it, right? I don't care what people want it to be. It's just Clovis. That's what it is. If somebody is intelligent enough to question you on your personal beliefs for nutrition, health, and wellness, they should be intelligent enough to learn something new. So stop calling it keto, stop calling it paleo, just call it Clovis. What is it? It's Clovis. What is Clovis? Look into it, dummy. I'm just kidding. But anyway, Clovis is not keto. It's time to spell out the differences. This will lead me into another annoying topic that I deal with. That's pet peeve number 2. Too much protein is bad for you. Also stated as, isn't all that protein bad for you? Right? Over and over and over, I hear this stuff nonstop. It's just like I did this with salt. People said sodium's bad for you. Sodium raises your blood pressure, blah, 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 blah. All nonsense. We handled that too. Right? So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Justin Nault. I am the CEO and founder of Clovis. I invented a product called the Perfect Paleo Powder in this kitchen literally 7 feet away from me is where I invented the Perfect Paleo Powder, the first formula in 2014, launched in 2015. I am now a certified nutritional therapist. I am a certified specialist in sports nutrition. I am in school again for more nutrition certifications, and I started Clovis, and now I transform people's lives. Literally over 500 people I have worked with on a one-on-one client basis, right? And we've had crazy transformations. People have lost 100 pounds, they've lost 60 pounds, they've lost 60 pounds in 40 days, they've lost 21 pounds in 14 days, crazy stuff, right? I transform people's lives. That's what I try to do here with these live AMAs that turn into podcasts. You can find everything online, easy to get to, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all the things, right? So now that you know a little bit about me, let's dive in. We got a good little crowd going here. Let me check. Yep, you guys are looking good. Got a couple of comments. Pretty killer. Yeah, looking good. Okay, let's jump in. So first things first, what is keto? We have to talk about where the confusion comes from. I have to define what keto is. Now, I literally said this in AMA number 1, right? I said I was gonna cite AMA number 1. I said, people are very confused about keto, and I actually blamed podcasters and influencers, right? I blame them. It's not necessarily their fault. They just don't know what they don't know. Specifically in AMA 1, I talk about guys like Joe Rogan and Brendan Schaub, who I am a huge fan of. Literally, I love both of their podcasts. They're fantastic. I'm a huge fight fan. I love everything that Brendan's doing. Joe Rogan is amazing. I'm a huge fan of Joe Rogan. And they started calling themselves keto when they were really just like avoiding grains and bread, right? They were just low carb, but they called themselves keto. Now what happens is these guys are doing some 100 million downloads a month on their podcast. It's insane. They're like the most famous podcasters on planet Earth, right? So what follows that is this epidemic of keto dieters, these copycats that are keto dieters that literally have no idea what they're talking about. Like none, not even a little bit. Like the way that Joe and Brendan talk about it is fragmented and a little bit confused. And then these guys, it's like a telephone game in kindergarten, right? Where the message gets changed. It's just awful at this point. So let me be clear about a few things. Low carb does not automatically mean ketogenic. Ketogenic does not automatically mean paleo. Paleo itself does not automatically mean low carb. Nothing could be further from the truth. And paleo never means ketogenic. Okay? Details matter, right? I say details matter over and over and over. That's really, really important. So let's start with what the ketogenic diet is not, and I'm gonna try to speak only in language that you already understand from previous AMAs. So I'm not gonna do a deep dive on the ketosis. So if you look at AMA number 19, and again, you can get this in the podcast, you can get it at clovis.store/AMAs. If you look at AMA number 19, it's called How Setting Goals Sabotages Freedom. I do a deep dive into ketosis. What happens when you draw your blood and measure the ketone levels in your blood? What's deep ketosis? What's light ketosis? Nutritional ketosis, right? I did a little masterclass in that, so go back and watch that because I'm limited on time here. So I'm gonna keep it basic, just the guidelines of the diet. What is keto, right? So, keto is not paleo. Not paleo, okay? Keto is not paleo. Why? Keto allows dairy. Right off the bat, it's not paleo for that reason. Paleo does not allow any dairy, right? Keto also allows basically any zero carbohydrate sweetener, right? Like these things that people put in coffee or bake with or whatever. It allows basically any zero carbohydrate sugar sweetener, regardless of what ingredients they're derived from. Again, not paleo. For instance, if you have a maltodextrin that is derived from corn, corn is not paleo, thus maltodextrin from corn is not paleo. Correct? Okay, there we go. So, keto is also not anti-inflammatory. So we put anti-inflam, right? It is not necessarily anti-inflammatory. Now, when I say these things, they're not blanket statements because I have to be fair, right? Keto is not necessarily anti-inflammatory, but it can be. When it's done correctly, it can be. Anything that lowers refined carbohydrate consumption is anti-inflammatory. But the blanket inclusion of all high-fat dairy products can often promote inflammation, especially if not sourced perfectly from just the right animals in just the right way. You could literally eat nothing but sour cream and be keto, right? So let's scratch the anti-inflammation. Keto is not paleo, keto is not anti-inflammatory, not by default, right? So then we have an issue with quality, right? I'm gonna get a new marker here. But we have an issue with quality. Now again, I have to be fair, okay? Because some people do keto right. Some people do focus on food quality. But generally speaking, people come in and they muddy the waters. That's what's happening, right? So many people on keto, we're dealing with an if it fits your macros type situation. If it fits your macros, if it's keto macros, doesn't matter where you get it from, you can eat nothing but feedlot kielbasa all day long, right? That's ridiculous. This is also how you end up with social media posts that get shared by millions of people telling their friends that they're keto, and they're giving them tips like, these are the foods to order at Wendy's to make your Wendy's order keto. These are the foods to order at Burger King to make your Burger King meal keto. These people are so dumb, I can't even wrap my brain around it, okay? I mean, I understand, I'm being mean, but I understand the concept of like, hey, if you have to get fast food, just make it less damaging, mitigate the damage or whatever. I don't buy that shit, man, because why? I would just fast. Right? Fasting, intermittent fasting is something that I've been preaching for quite a while now. From the beginning of Clovis, we've talked about intermittent fasting way back when and time-restricted eating, right? So don't try to make terrible, crappy, low-quality food is not keto. Don't try to make it keto, right? So that's the thing, is if you're not monitoring food quality, keto is not necessarily high quality all the time. Again, this is misinformed people muddying the waters. That's a problem, right? So what is keto really, okay? So let's start with macros. So if we're talking about macros, this is what's really important. This is how you reach a state of deep nutritional ketosis, right? So if we talk about fat, we're looking at daily calories from fat at anywhere to 70 to 90% of daily calories. That's a lot of fat. It is a lot of fat. You're basically treating fat like a supplement, okay? So the thing with fat, if we were to take averages, now again, there's a lot of different experts with a lot of different books, there's a lot of different influencers with blogs and vlogs and every other thing you can think of in YouTube channels, but on average, this number for fat, you're looking at about 78% of calories from fat, right? A lot of fat. That's a lot of fat, okay? So you're looking at about 78%. Now, daily net carbs, so if you look at carbs, you're looking at around 3 on the low end to 5, maybe 7% of carbohydrates, but really you're looking at that 3 to 5% of daily calories from net carbohydrates, okay? Now, it's literally almost zero. I have a problem with this. I don't like the implications of this for the gut microbiome, which thrives on dietary fiber and micronutrients found in leafy green vegetables. I am a huge fan of telling people to eat leafy green vegetables, right? The other issue, the third one, is we're gonna get into protein. Now again, comparatively, if you're wondering, this fat, 78%, I recommend around 60. Net carbs are always net carbs, right? 3 to 5%, I recommend around 10. Now we're talking protein, right? So protein is anywhere from like 17 to 20% on a ketogenic diet. Now again, just so nobody's confused, we're talking about keto here. This is keto, okay? So we're talking about keto. Protein, 17 to 20%. Why? People worry about something called gluconeogenesis. The body can convert protein into glucose in the system, but it only does it under specific circumstances. It's really not a concern. It's not the concern that people think that it is, okay? And believe it or not, of all of this right here, this is the number that really bothers me. This is where I really struggle with keto. And we're going to talk about that a little down the line. We're gonna get there. But first things first, let's talk about all this fat, right? Let's talk about all this fat. So, to do this right, you literally need to drink fat, right? As you guys know, you guys have all been shocked by the caloric need that I give you, right? When I tell you you need to eat this many calories or this is your macros, a lot of women are like, I don't know how you expect me to hit those numbers. That's so much food, right? It's more food than you expect. Now picture if you had way more fat added to that. You literally need to drink fat to make this work. So things like bulletproof coffee make up the majority of your diet. You're drinking constant MCT oil, you're supplementing butter, you're cooking things in bacon all day long, etc., etc. Does fat make you fat? No, of course not. That's technically impossible from a biochemistry standpoint unless under certain circumstances mixed with carbohydrates, blah, 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 blah. If you're eating low carb, fat is not going to make you fat, right? I'm a huge fan of fat. It's a superfood. Most of your daily calories on the Clovis protocol come from fat, just not this high. So my question is, I'm a fan of fat. Do I think you should be slurping up as much fat as humanly possible when your goal is to burn stored body fat? Probably not, especially if you're overweight, right? The fat you're adding to the bloodstream very well can and probably will be burned for energy before your triglycerides, your stored fat, depending on the type of fat you're ingesting. It's like the gas tank with glucose all over again. So let's dive into this. Obviously, I only have a certain amount of room, so I gotta erase this, right? So let's dive into the gas tank analogy. This is everybody's favorite. Every time I talk about the gas tank, people go, that visual is amazing, right? We talk about it as we have this gas tank, and I cut it in half, and I say, this is your glucose, then you have the detox, and then you have fat, right? So today, we're going to assume that fat adaptation has already happened, right? So fat adaptation has already happened. We're gonna assume that you're here. This is just fat, okay? So you have full, you have empty, this is just fat. So erase that whole top portion is already gone from that gas tank. So you have no glucose in your system, your glycogen stores are depleted, you're now fat adapted, you're burning fat for energy, right? So what happens here is when fat is ingested, depending on the state of the body, whether you're fed or fasted, and all that means is fed meaning insulin levels and blood glucose levels are high, fasted meaning that insulin levels are low and blood glucose levels are low, all right? So depending on what state you're in, the ingested fat must be either burned or stored, okay? Now, even if you're following a strict ketogenic diet or fasting, if you're constantly adding fats to the diet like MCTs take priority. They must be burned because they can't be stored. So let me erase this a little bit and let's talk like this, right? This is your body fat, okay? So let's call this body fat. Now let's say your body fat is here, okay? This is all body fat. You want to burn this stored body fat, right? So you've already gone through the glucose, you've gone through the glycogen, you're through your detox, you're fat adapted, and you want to burn this body fat. But because of these keto protocols, you're drinking MCT oils, or you're taking exogenous ketones, or you're cooking everything in butter, or everything in bacon grease, or whatever. So what's happening is things like MCTs are adding fuel, right? So as long as you're doing this, we'll call this exogenous fat, right? As long as this exogenous fat is just coming in, topping off the tank, your body's just gonna live right here, burning this fat that you're putting in the system, right? So as long as you're just adding exogenous, basically MCT is as close to an exogenous ketone as you're gonna get, besides like a beta hydroxybutyrate supplement, right? So as long as you're supplementing all this additional fat, you're not gonna tap into these body fat stores. Now granted, I'm talking about particular fats like MCTs, but really any ingested fat over here. Now what's gonna happen is ingested fat is treated just like stored fat in your adipose tissue, right? So it's gonna be burned or it's gonna be stored. Now if you're in this fasted state, it's probably going to get burned. So what happens is they literally mix together. The dietary fat, the ingested fat as triglycerides, and the triglycerides found in your adipose tissue, they're both mixing together, they're being burned, they're being stored, they're coming in and out of the cells constantly in what's called like a turnover pool, right? So they're both getting burned. They're getting mixed together and burned. But my question is, ask yourself, wouldn't you prefer that most of the fat being burned comes from your stored body fat? Of course, right? So don't get me wrong, I am a fan of most of your daily calories coming from dietary fats. I'm simply saying don't drink fat through a straw until you can't move, right? So eating truly ketogenic levels of fat is very difficult each and every day, day in, day out, to do that consistently and keep up with that compliance rate, right? This is another reason why I generally can't use full keto with athletes. I work with glycolytic athletes, particularly fighters, right? Their caloric need is so high that to put them at 78% daily calories from fat, they would literally be drinking olive oil in a glass. Like they would be drinking olive oil by the glass, literally, to make that kind of caloric need with 78% coming from fat, right? Now, if you saw pictures of my MMA fighter, Peta, she's posed like this, 12-pack abs, she's sub 10% body fat. She can't rely on stored body fat for energy, right? She can't rely on this. She doesn't have enough. And there's something called essential body fat. If your body creeps up on that, it will stop burning body fat, right? So if she's low carb, now I have to supplement things like ketones, things like MCT oils. She's taking like 4 servings of paleo powder a day. We actually do exogenous ketones when she's doing 2 a day trainings, right? But for overweight people, this makes no sense because there's plenty of body fat to spare, okay? This is why I generally recommend 60% daily calories from fat, not 70, 78. But remember, fat is the most calorically dense macronutrient on Earth at 9 calories per gram. So a difference, if I'm talking 60, right? This difference of 18%, I mean, you're talking a difference of 18% of your daily calories coming from fat at 9 calories a gram. That's easily 30 to 60 grams of extra fat, depending on the individual and their caloric need. That's a huge difference. That is a huge difference, right? Like an average bulletproof coffee, I think is like 24 grams of fat or something like that. You're talking between 30 to 60 extra grams of fat. Now, to keep in mind, I'm a big fan of the keto diet. I am not trashing keto at all. I'm just explaining that in the beginning, the supplementation of ketones makes sense because the body doesn't know how to burn fat. You're teaching it how to burn fat with easy to convert to energy fatty acids such as MCT oils. You give it MCT oil, the body knows how to burn those. So that's basically warming up the body to burn body fat, right? You're teaching it to do something. So in the beginning, you're gonna see drastic fat loss with these overweight people. But I see a lot of people plateau. And every time someone plateaus on keto, they are always treating fat as a supplement, right? More fat, more fat, more fat. Eating, drinking as much fat as possible. It's all about bacon and bacon grease and avocados and butter and MCT oil and coconut oil, right? As much fat as possible all the time. And they can't figure out why they're plateauing. You're not giving the body a chance to burn the freaking body fat that's stored in your body, right? So when do I love keto, right? I'm just trying, I know I'm going kind of quick, but man, these things go by quick. So I first learned about keto when my niece was in the hospital, right, with her seizure disorder, KCNQ2. That's when I learned about the ketogenic diet for the treatment of seizures. So I talked about this in a bunch of AMAs, I'm not gonna get into that. This is exactly how I see the ketogenic diet. A therapeutic modality. That's what I see the ketogenic diet being used for. It works incredibly well for neurological disorders. Now, most people don't know what KCNQ2 is, the terminal illness that my niece deals with. So let's use other examples. Alzheimer's disease and cancer. The ketogenic diet is fantastic at improving symptoms of both of these issues. Alzheimer's, cancer, dementia, the list goes on and on, right? In the case of Alzheimer's, we can actually thank mild autophagy and apoptosis. Now, as we talked about in the fasting AMA, fasting facts, the protein restriction plays a critical role in the autophagy and apoptosis. Now, what people don't realize is Alzheimer's is actually a buildup of proteins in the brain. It's nasty old malfunctioning cells. As we know, amino acids make up proteins, proteins make up cells. The brain is literally filled with old protein gunk, okay? This protein is called amyloid beta protein. This is widely documented. If you want to look up amyloid beta protein, it's crazy, right? So one of the reasons for this, you might think it's an overconsumption of protein, but it's actually not. What it is it's glycation. So think of glycation for rust, like rust on a car, like rust in your cells. Except it's not rust, it's sugar. So glycation, or in the case of Alzheimer's, you're talking about something called advanced glycation, is literally like sugar-frosted cells. You have eaten so many carbohydrates and there's so much sugar in the system that the sugar binds to these cells, binds to proteins, and you have something called advanced glycation. Now what happens there is if you have these sugar molecules binding to these proteins, it makes the proteins sticky. And now they can gunk up and stick together. So you have this amyloid beta protein that's gunking up and sticking together in the brain and literally causing problems in the neurons in your brain, right? Memory shortages, all these things. It's really crazy. Now, fun side note is this glycation and advanced glycation is the reason for clogged arteries. It's not fat, it's just that you have a coating of sugar that makes everything sticky. It's horrible, literally. It's like rust, but instead of little red rust particles, think of sugar, right? That's advanced glycation. So it's a problem. So Alzheimer's is a problem of both carbohydrates and an actual buildup of protein. So, as I stated in the fasting AMA, fasting is a great way to initiate apoptosis and autophagy. Right? In the case of apoptosis, we're talking about programmed cell death. In the case of autophagy, we're talking about cleaning out the old malfunctioning parts, like working on a car, right? Take the tire off, put a new tire on. Take the transmission out, put a new transmission in. Take the old malfunctioning parts of the cells, strip them down, flush them out, and rebuild new healthy cells. The ketogenic diet allows the body to clear out some of the protein gunk in the brain. Now, as for cancer, we know that cancer feeds on glucose. This is factual, right? So carbohydrate restriction is a no-brainer for starving out malignant cells, right? I just realized I'm getting real sciencey. Is everybody still with me here? So yeah, I know you guys always ask for science, but I'm going kind of quick. But yeah, cancer, you can starve it out by a extreme restriction of glucose, which works incredibly well when partnered with traditional modalities such as chemotherapy to really rapidly reduce the cancer issue, right? So if everyone's still with me, again, this is all just my opinion. I believe that ketogenic diets are to be used as a therapeutic modality, not a daily way of life, okay? That was a lot. All right, I have a lot more notes. I'm gonna take a break. I'm just gonna force a break on this, and you guys let me know what you wanna talk about. Give me a couple comments, let me know how you feel about, advanced glycation, if you wanna talk about amyloid beta protein, Alzheimer's, cancer, seizures, all these things. It's really tricky. That might be the first time you've heard of glycation, which literally is to be thought of as sugar frosted cells. It's pretty unbelievable. So there's a lot here, right? So you know what, before I dive in, just think about this. Think about this. When you guys watch these videos and you see what's happening here, and you see what's happening here in my brain and here in my heart and where the shit that I teach you comes from, really look at this. And then stop and think if you should give a flying fuck about Aunt Judith who doesn't think that cholesterol is good for you in the diet. Should you really care? And if you do care, why? Ask yourself why you care. That's important. You shouldn't care what other people think. All right, let's hit some comments. What are we looking at? Mind blown. Hell yeah. Bull honky. Anything with the words Wendy's in it. Fantastic. Greg, what up, Greg? I haven't seen you on one of these before. I am adorable. Thank you, Greg. All right, anything with the word Wendy's in it, bull honky. Didn't realize keto macros were in those ranges. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. People don't actually know what keto is. They just hear the word, Definitely into it now. Just mind blown. Yes, science. Science. Yes, love science. I'm loving the science. Thanks for sharing. You're very welcome. Love science. Loving the science. Thank you. Who? Glycation. Yes, glycation and advanced glycation. And amyloid beta protein. Thanks, Alzheimer's. Don't give a flying no more. Exactly, don't. That's what I'm saying. It's like, I get frustrated. You guys see me get pissed sometimes and get real animated because I'm like, why do you care what these people think? Like, my dad raised me this way, right? None of this is in my notes. We're just gonna wing it now. My dad raised me this way. He said, consider the source, right? If you're a little kid, someone makes fun of you, consider the source. That kid's probably a little shit eater. Don't worry about what that kid thinks, right? Or if you're an adult and someone is 350 pounds and trying to tell you that eating all that fat is bad for your heart, consider the source. You wanna look like them? Nope. Is the advice that I'm giving you changing your life for the better? Yes. Do you have that shown definitively in weight, in inches, in fat loss, in energy, in depression, in mood, in family life, everything, right? Do you have that? Yes. So tell these people to go screw. Like literally, a lot of times I feel like I'm just defending the Clovis protocol in these AMAs. Like I really feel like I'm sitting here defending my own protocol because you guys have a bunch of ass clowns in your life who are telling you that you're doing things wrong. It's a constant argument, right? That's what I'm saying. Just start telling people, listen, it's Clovis. It's Clovis. You want to know what it is? Here's the podcast. Go learn about it. Leave me alone. Go eat your mac and cheese. I'm going to eat my avocado. You can go to hell, right? There we go. So let's jump in. Where Clovis is different. Wait a second. I lost my cursor. Okay, there we go. Where Clovis is different. So fat intake. Of course, we already touched on fat intake. So I don't actually need to cover fat because fat was the first thing we talked about. Then carbohydrates. I allow around 10% daily carbohydrates for the sake of micronutrient intake and gut microbiome support, okay? Now, the big one, so again, fat and protein are energy. Fat and carbs are energy. But now we're gonna talk about protein. There are only two macronutrients that are energy. Some branched chain amino acids can be burned for energy under extreme circumstances, but for the sake of argument, there are two energy macros, and then there's one macro that is called protein in its own category, right? So, Without fail, this is the number one response I get from people when they first get their macros. Isn't all that protein bad for you? I heard that too much protein kills your kidneys. Isn't all this protein bad for kids? Constantly I get this. Protein's bad. Too much protein's bad. Too much protein's bad for your kidneys. This, that, the other thing, right? And can we just be honest and say, some of you in this room have said that to me, right? So, in this room, my room, digitally, right? But can we just say and be honest that every single person who has ever said that to me has no clue what they're talking about, and they don't even know where they heard that from. They don't know who told them that. They don't know where they read it. They don't know who planted the seed that too much protein is bad for the kidneys. Honestly, it was probably a doctor that said that to them, but they really don't know. We are just human beings parrot things. We parrot a lot of shit. It drives me nuts. It's one of my least favorite things about humans. They parrot things because everybody likes to sound smart, right? But they have no clue where this came from. So too much protein is bad for your kidneys. I want to be clear on something. This has never been clinically proven unless the individuals are already suffering tremendously from severe kidney disease. They already have kidney disease. They have an earlier condition, okay? So these people have kidney disease. Now, even then, theoretically, with kidney disease, they may have issues with a high protein diet. Not with an adequate protein diet, with a very high protein diet, theoretically, okay? Now, in healthy individuals, this is not a problem whatsoever. Literally not a problem whatsoever. All that happens on a high protein diet is you'll see hyperfiltration in the kidneys, okay? Hyperfiltration is perfectly safe. It just means that you're asking the kidneys to do a little bit more. They can handle it perfectly. And you'll see an increase in something called glomeruli. Glomeruli are literally the filters on your kidneys. That's what actually filters the blood, right? So you'll see an increase in the size of glomeruli. That also is not a problem. It used to be thought that this was pathological, that the growth in this glomeruli was a problem, but it's really not. It's the same as if you start doing bicep curls day after day after day after day, and then you increase the weight, increase the reps, whatever, the biceps are going to get bigger. It's simply an adaptation. It's just like we talked about, fasting, heat therapy, cold therapy, it's all adaptations, right? So you'll see hyperfiltration, you'll see an increase in the size of glomeruli. These are not scary things, okay? This has been proven over and over again. In fact, we have countless gold standard, randomized clinical trials that have studied healthy humans consuming high protein takes of easily 35% or more protein of their daily calories coming from protein. Not only have we seen zero adverse effects, we have seen actual health benefits from protein levels this high. So I'll give you an example. In individuals with protein intakes of 15 to 30% of their daily calories from protein, you actually see a big change in hormone regulation for hunger hormones, in leptin and ghrelin, right? This actually increases leptin sensitivity, and a lot of overweight people are leptin resistant, right? It's the hormone that tells the body you're full. I talk about this in AMA 19, actually. 19, the same one where I talk about fasting, where I talk about ketosis, okay? So at these levels, 15 to 30, it also induces weight loss and increases blood sugar control, which is fantastic for people like type 2 diabetics, right? This Clovis protocol is fantastic for type 2 diabetics. We've talked about that before. Again, I'm not a doctor. Don't play one on the internet. Can't give medical advice. That wasn't medical advice. Don't take it that way. Do with my knowledge what you will. Your risk, right? Clinical studies also show that intakes which would be considered very high by mainstream standards, which are 25 to 32%. Again, I don't think of these as very high, but the standard mainstream medical advice does think of it as very high. So these levels, 25 to 32%, have been shown to be beneficial for weight loss and blood pressure, okay? So losing weight and decreasing blood pressure in who? Type 2 diabetics, okay? Are we cool? You guys got that? Literally, weight loss, blood pressure control, and blood sugar control in type 2 diabetics with a high protein diet. Yet, the criminals who direct films like What the Health that they put on Netflix are allowed to release these films and say, sugar doesn't cause diabetes, animal protein does. Zero science. Where's the science to back it up? The studies literally don't exist. Not only that, you can name countless studies that prove the exact opposite. It's insane. What kind of world are we living in here, people? Huh? Nutso. Okay. In fact, my opinion, now we'll get into my opinion on this, right? I think that protein deficiency has played a massive and often overlooked role in the obesity epidemic in America as a whole. Now we'll get there. But the other thing that I want to talk about is the idea that too much protein, okay, so we just talked about kidneys. Too much protein and cancer, right? Too much protein causes cancer. Again, more bullshit from usual vegan propaganda, okay? Too much protein causes cancer. The reason that we have this is terribly executed and outright biased, really, like just really bad studies such as the China study that come out and they raise these claims. Now, I'm gonna walk you through why they say this, because they're taking facts and they're just putting a little bit of spin on them to mess up your brain and get you confused and make guys like me look crazy, okay? So the idea is that high total protein intake raises something called IGF-1. IGF-1 is insulin-like growth factor, right? We've talked about growth hormone before. Growth hormone is actually raised while you're fasting, along with noradrenaline, right? So this is a growth hormone, right? Now, IGF-1 does have a correlation at very high levels with an increased risk of cancer. Again, dietary lifestyle changes my risk of cancer is probably 0 right now, literally, okay? But they have been able to tie high IGF-1 levels with increased risk of cancer, okay? But it turns out, this China study, all this bullshit, they have to go back and revise these things. Why? Because details matter, okay? It's actually methionine, which is one particular amino acid that raises IGF-1, okay? So it's not total protein intake. One particular amino acid called methionine, and methionine is found most abundantly in lean animal proteins, okay? Remember that, lean animal proteins. Now, when you're eating fattier cuts, like I talk about, I'll tell you my recommendation in a second. When you're eating fattier cuts of meat, and especially organ meats, you raise your intake of another amino acid called glycine. Now, glycine basically neutralizes any potential risk of methionine, right? So you're not gonna see this spike in IGF-1 if you're balancing levels of methionine and glycine, generally speaking, okay? There are, crazy circumstances. There's always going to be outliers, all these things, right? Generally speaking, if you have high levels of glycine, high levels of methionine, they kind of neutralize each other, right? Now again, these are the fattier cuts of meat, your organ meats, all those things, the idea of eating nose to tail. This is why things like this exist. This is why I suggest plenty of protein from fatty grass-fed beef, 85% lean grass-fed beef, maybe 90% lean grass-fed beef, and fatty wild-caught fish, right? I told you guys before, I don't even eat chicken, right? I don't. It's a pain in the ass to find pasture-raised chicken. It's a pain in the ass to cook. I kill one animal and feed myself for a day because of my caloric need. Or if I kill a cow, I can feed myself for a year. What makes more sense in the terms of killing things, right? That kind of thing. See how details matter, okay? It's cherry-picked data. It's cherry-picked. So something worth noting here with IGF-1 is, I'll just put RT here, resistance training, okay? Something worth noting with IGF-1 is that it's clinically proven that resistance training lowers IGF-1 levels in the bloodstream, which is fantastic. So if you're a guy like me, I do some form of resistance training almost every single day, from body weight to barbells to kettlebells and everything in between, right? So there are studies that show that IGF-1 levels are negatively impacted by resistance training, and particularly lean muscle growth. So if you lift weights, don't even worry about this. If you lift weights and you're muscular, don't even worry about this, okay? Don't worry about IGF-1. Eat the damn protein, okay? Not to mention the fact that we know cancer feeds on glucose, right? So all this right here, this IGF-1, we're talking about, big scary cancer, right? But we know cancer feeds on glucose. So if we're already low carb, we're not eating inflammatory foods, we're not eating trans fats, we're not eating industrial seed oils, we're not eating soybean oil, all this bullshit, our risk of cancer is ridiculously low already. So do you see resistance training, IGF-1 levels that are safe, eating organ meats, eating fatty cuts of beef, eating low carbohydrate to lower our risk of cancer? Do you see how all of this fits together like a tiny little puzzle? It's like somebody who cares about you put a puzzle together and handed it to you. And what happens is you hand people the puzzle and all they want to do is question your puzzle making abilities. That's really where we're at. But yeah, so that's it. Let's see, what do we got here? How much time? All right, I'm gonna check comments real quick and then I'm gonna dive into this next section. I was gonna skip comments because I got a little bit here. What the health was awful? Yes, absolutely. Fasted 20 hours, broke my record. That's awesome. It's a 20-hour fast, dude. Don't even worry about what to break your fast with. Like, it's not gonna affect you in the least. If you had fasted for 7 days, I'd be like, maybe we should start with some liquids or something like that, but you eat whatever you want, literally. You'll be fine. What's up, dude? Starting keto past 2 weeks. Up with energy, mood is all over the place. What do you recommend with supplements? Don't worry about supplements. Everybody gets caught up in that. The only thing I recommend in the beginning is electrolytes. 5 to 7 grams of sodium, okay, every single day. I recommend Redmond Real Salt. That's important. Hydrate yourself, get your electrolytes. That's all you need to worry about in the beginning. Please talk about the quality of foods for the newbies in keto that don't care about what fats they're eating. I would say very few people, at least in Clovis, don't care what fats they're eating. But yeah, that's a big deal. I don't really have time to go into. I mean, I talked about dairy in the beginning, like high-fat dairy, not a fan of it, right? Trans fats and industrial seed oils, just talked about that. Don't touch that shit. But yeah, so pretty general stuff there. Loving the science. Let's see. What the health? Get out of my brain. Vegans, yes. Love organ meats. Haven't thought of the chicken that way. Yes. Many people do not think of this chicken thing, right? So, like I said, when I go to all the camps and I pull what I like and violently reject what I don't like, well, I pull what works and then I violently reject the nonsense, the dogmatic stuff, right? So when we talk about animal rights activists, they get a lot right. I think feedlot cattle should be illegal. Feedlot chickens, pigs, everything. These factory farms should be illegal. Absolutely, right? And if you think about the death to feeding ratio, which is what we'll call it, is like if I fed myself with nothing but chickens, I'd have to kill like 365 living creatures a year for me to sustain the amount of muscle mass that I have, the amount of exercise that I do out in that gym. There's a full-blown powerlifting gym right next to me right now, right? So for me to maintain that, I'd have to kill hundreds of animals. Or I can kill one animal. Or I can go hunting and kill one animal and feed my entire family for a year, or feed my entire family for a season, or I can go out and kill 2 animals and feed my entire family for a year, right? Think about it. The death to feeding ratio. It's a big thing, big deal. All right, let's jump back in. I keep losing my cursor. I can't find it. Where is it? There we go, got it. All right, so let's jump into Clovis and why I like 30% daily calories from protein, okay? I like 30%. Like we said, keto is right around 17 to 20. Almost every expert is gonna tell you to keep it at 20 or below. Almost every single one's gonna say that, right? Now, I like 30% calories from protein, especially in overweight individuals, okay? So I'm gonna write protein here. Especially in overweight individuals. This actually isn't necessarily as true for somebody like me, okay? There is simply no faster way on planet Earth to reverse insulin resistance than high protein, moderate fat, low carbohydrate. There is no faster way to reverse insulin resistance, period. And every single person who is overweight has insulin resistance. Understand that. Insulin resistance is a driver of people being overweight, of obesity, okay? So high protein, moderate fat, low carb. That is my approach. Why? Protein is the most important macronutrient for satiety. Satiety is literally the feeling of full, okay? So let's say satiety, right? So satiety is literally the feeling of being full. It's what stops you from eating, right? Protein is the most important macronutrient for satiety. Now, in animal studies, if you take other omnivores, right, that eat plants and animals, if you take other omnivores and give them a food that's high in protein and a food that is high in energy, like we talked about, fat or carbohydrates, they will eat them both, they will nibble both of them at a perfect ratio instinctually, right, for satiety and optimal health. That's just what animals do. If you give them a natural food that they would find in their environment that they would eat, they'll eat at a perfect ratio. That's like we talked about. We are the only animals. There's only 2 animals that get overweight. Humans and the animals that humans feed with food that they're not supposed to eat, right? So that's the thing. We're the only animals that in the animal kingdom get ourselves fat. We're the only ones, right? Humans are the same way, but the issue is we have those same instincts. We have those same instincts. So let's break these down into two parts, okay? So I want you to look at something like this, like I talked about with macros. You have one, let's talk protein. Two, you have energy, okay? So there's three macronutrients as we know, but now you have protein, one, energy, fat, and carbohydrates. What I mean by that is energy macros are burned or stored in the body. So you have fat stored as triglycerides, you have carbs, glucose stored as glycogen. That's all there is to it. Now, if you don't eat enough protein, period, this is period, if you don't eat enough protein, you will get cravings for energy. That is going to happen, okay? So if you don't get enough protein, you're going to get cravings for energy, and generally speaking, 99.99999% of the time, those cravings are going to be for carbohydrates. So if you don't eat enough protein, you are going to get carbohydrate cravings. I believe that protein deficiency, again, in my opinion, is one of the #1 reasons for people overeating carbohydrates constantly in America. It's almost irrefutable if you look at it. It's really crazy. I'm going to get into it deeper with you, right? If you don't get enough protein, you will overeat, period. I want to be clear about that because of satiety. You will overeat. Another thing I want to touch on with the Clovis Academy, because we have 85% women, right? Symptoms in women and my advice. I hear this stuff all the time, especially when clients first come to me, first meet me, they send me that introductory email, what their health goals are and what they want to work on, right? Let me name some of the most common symptoms that female clients tell me about. They're always cold, their hair is thinning, that's come up a lot in the Clovis Academy, brittle nails. Many women come to me with blood work from their doctor showing things like a vitamin D deficiency or particularly B12 deficiencies. I see B12 deficiencies all the time. There's probably some of you watching who have had your doctor tell you that you have a B12 deficiency. They do B12 shots, they do all these things, right? Guess what are all symptoms of protein deficiency? Every single thing I just mentioned. Cold hands and feet, thinning hair, brittle nails, and vitamin B12 is only found in animal products. Even if you're supplementing it, it came from an animal at some point. Vitamin B12 is only found in animal products. This is a huge problem with vegans because vegans don't want to supplement B12 because the products came from an animal, right? Goes against their vegan beliefs. So also in America, right in line with the graph of the obesity epidemic, so if you look at, let's do it down here. If you look at the obesity epidemic, like that, that is perfectly in line, so let's call this obesity, is in line with protein intake, believe it or not. Okay? So less protein equals more obesity. Let's dive into this. So what has happened is something called protein dilution. Okay? This means that there is less protein in the American food supply overall. Protein dilution is very dangerous. We're going to talk about it with other cultures and what that means, right? So what this means is Americans have to eat more food to get the same amount of protein. Now, the way protein dilution works is for every 1 gram of protein that the food supply drops by, you have to eat 14% more food to get the same protein satiety, to get your body to where it wants to be. For every 1% drop in protein in the food supply, you have to eat 14% more food to get to that protein satiety point. Now, this is actually clear across all cultures. Protein intake is very consistent, okay? So what happens is in previous AMAs, you've heard me talk about the blue zones, right? Like these people eat whale blubber and mostly fat and they live to be 100. And these Okinawans eat nothing but white rice and mostly carbohydrates and they live to be 100. And the Mediterranean diet includes grains and legumes and they live to be 100 and blah, 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 blah. So what everyone's talking about is energy. They go, how many carbohydrates are these people eating? What's the fat intake of these people? What's the heart disease like? Because we know that fat is connected to heart disease. No, right? We know that glycation is. We just talked about that in carbohydrate intake. But, so the idea is, what is the energy ratio, right? How much fat are they eating? How much carbohydrates are they eating? And nobody talks about protein, okay? Protein intake is unchanged across almost all cultures. It just stays constant, right? Protein is critical to everyone. Every single cell in the human body is made of proteins, right? So it is critical that protein stays the same. Tiny little changes across cultures, up or down in protein, causes massive swings up or down in obesity across that culture. Protein, 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 right? Example, America. As protein intake has gone down, obesity has gone up. Basically, perfectly correlated or corresponded, whatever you want to call it, to the American obesity epidemic is protein dilution in the American food supply. It's insane. If your goal is fat loss, you must think in terms of protein and energy, right? You have to. So contrary to the ketogenic diet, you can actually eat as much as 35% of your daily calories from protein and still be in ketosis, still be in fat burning mode. They're so afraid of this gluconeogenesis thing, but gluconeogenesis really just comes from an excess of glucose, right? So that's the issue, is if you're eating properly with the proper macronutrient ratios, you can literally eat 35% of your daily calories from protein and still be in ketosis, okay? Why? Because animal protein is literally the perfect food. So it's estimated that our ancestors, like Paleolithic ancestors, got 2/3 of their calories from animal products. 2/3 of their calories, okay? They got 2/3 of their calories from animal products. Why did that work out so well for them? Because these animal proteins, these meats, not just saying protein, these animal products like grass-fed beef, wild-caught fish, things like that, it's almost a perfect ratio of 2-to-1. 2-to-1 ratio. Okay? Now what I mean by 2-to-1 ratio is protein and fat. Okay? Literally like a clean 2-to-1 ratio of protein to fat. So let's talk about what that means. We know that fat is the most calorically dense macronutrient, right? 9 calories per gram. We have protein and carbohydrates that have 4 calories per gram. So for this 2 grams of protein, you're looking at 8 calories. For this 1 gram of fat, you're looking at 9 calories. See what I'm saying? The ratio is literally perfect. High protein, moderate fat. Does this sound familiar? Clovis. Boom. There you have it. We literally just went through the difference between ketogenic and the Clovis approach and why the Clovis protocol is literally what I call a plateau buster. There is a reason, right? Now, I'm going to toot my own horn here, but I'm really tooting the Clovis horn. There is a reason why I consistently get results in every single person who comes to me, period. Whether it is a skinny little man who wants to put on 10 pounds of muscle, gotcha, dude. Whether it is a 400-pound person who wants to lose 100 pounds, gotcha, dude. All I have to do is tweak the numbers up or down, tweak the caloric intake, tweak the macronutrients. There is a reason why when you fall into a camp, when people come to me and say, I tried Whole30, it didn't work, or I plateaued. I tried keto, it didn't work, or I plateaued. I tried paleo, it didn't work, or I plateaued. I tried bulletproof, I keto, I plateaued, and it didn't work. I tried calorie counting, and I plateaued, and it didn't work. Weight Watchers, blah, 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 blah. There's a reason these things plateau. This is why I think of Clovis personally as the complete and utter plateau buster. This is why we do this, because I know how these things work on a very deep level. Okay? So understand that. Feel free to share this. It's going to be a podcast. Everything, share it with your people, all your people that are judging you, whatever. Let's jump in to some comments. I hope you guys have some live Q&A. You gotta have Q&A at this point. I mean, with this one, this was a crazy, crazy AMA. This is a really good one. What's the reason behind the maximum 8 ounce of grass-fed meat? No, just to be safe, okay? I wanna be clear about this. On the approved foods list, the reason why that is there is, and I'll tell you why. Here's the big issue with this thing, the protein. Protein as being one of the most important macronutrients, is protein is hands down the most expensive product in the grocery store, okay? It really is. When you're looking at meat per ounce or per gram or per pound or whatever, it is the most expensive. So what I've done with the approved foods list, if you don't have an I Am Clovis plan, you don't know this. What I've done with the approved foods list is I have foolproofed it, okay? I have to foolproof these things. So I actually anticipate what people are going to do wrong and I guard against it. So I should clarify that for you, so thank you for bringing that up. The 8 ounce limit is foolproofing because I know that no matter what people tell me, a lot of people are not buying grass-fed beef. I know that to be true. People admit it to me in emails, they say it in the academy, they say it in text messages with me, Instagram messages, whatever, that they simply haven't made the switch to 100% pasture-raised grass-fed beef, or they're not getting it from a local farm. Some people are. If you are doing 100% grass-fed beef, take that 8 ounce thing and remove it. Don't even worry about it, okay? Don't worry about it at all. But I have to foolproof these things because I know how the human brain works. I know how people's behavior works. I've done it, again, with over 500 people. I've done this, and I know that for sure, very few people are doing 100% grass-fed. So especially like if you're traveling or something and you're gonna eat out at a restaurant, like and you get a couple quarter-pound patties or whatever, limit it to that because that patty's gonna have, it's gonna be cooked in hydrogenated vegetable oils, gonna be cooked in industrial seed oils, right? And you don't know where the meat's coming from. So that is just a foolproof thing, just so you know. I just spent $500 on groceries for 4 teens and preteens. Listen to what he says. That was at Sam's. It wasn't grass-fed. Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I have to foolproof these things. So there's a lot of times people will think that they see some stuff in the plan when they're just like, hey, wait a minute. But I promise you, I'm just thinking these things through to the nth degree to make sure that I'm setting people up for success, So anyway, that's the 8-ounce thing. What other questions we got? No cheese. No, definitely no cheese. I would not do cheese at all. Yeah, but see, that's the other issue is Mike, have you watched this whole thing? I'm not keto, right? I am not an advocate for people doing keto. I'm an advocate for people doing the Clovis protocol. You can do keto if you want to, but literally this whole hour video that I just did is how I don't like keto for day-to-day life and how it includes inflammatory high-fat dairy products, namely cheese. Most cheese in America is horrific. You don't want to eat it. You can get Kerrygold cheese that's $6 for a cheese this big that comes from 100% grass-fed cows, or you can get goat's milk or sheep's milk cheese, maybe, but again, there's a reason it's not on my approved foods list. I don't like these things. I just don't. So I absolutely wouldn't do cheese, no. Chicken, what else we got? We're back up to vegans. Okay, let's see. That makes me happy after IF, a big old grass-fed steak. Yes, absolutely. There you go. That's fantastic. Can you go over real quick grass-fed versus grain-fed beef? Real quick, because I've covered this in depth in other AMAs. Grain-fed is terrible, and it has to do with fat, okay? So when we talk about vitamins A, D, K, and E, right, they are fat-soluble. Other things that are fat-soluble that are super fun, hormones, antibiotics, all these things. So you literally have these feedlot animals. Some of them are being fed candy wrappers. Like, I kid you not, they're literally being fed candy wrappers. They're also being fed grains, which they're not designed to eat. So they're eating these grains. It's causing all kinds of problems in their stomachs. It's actually causing acid reflux in a tremendous amount, so much so that the cows will stop eating. So what do the farmers do? They inject them with the primary ingredient in Tums, antacid, right? The number one active ingredient in Tums, the vast majority that is used globally is pumped into the stomachs of feedlot cows, okay? So they're eating grains, their bodies are full of inflammation, so literally when you eat the fat, and it's impossible to strip the fat completely out of these grain-fed animals, you're eating hormones, antibiotics, you're eating inflammatory cytokines, essentially inflammatory biomarkers, you're putting inflammation in your body. It's just disgusting. It's really, really bad. Like, I can't even express it. The omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is crazy. That's also pro-inflammatory. There's way more omega-6 than there is omega-3. Omega-3, anti-inflammatory. Omega-6, highly inflammatory. Grass-fed beef, it's like 6 to 8 times more omega-3. Grain-fed beef, it's like 6 to 8 times more omega-6, less omega-3. There really is, no matter how you slice it, there is no universe in which grain-fed beef is even close to grass-fed beef. People will make the arguments that the amino acids are almost identical if you strip down the amino acids. Now, granted, if you're talking about like my products has pasture-raised beef collagen peptides, right? If you were to just take stripped down beef collagen peptides, which are stripped down amino acids, they would be virtually identical from grass-fed or grain-fed animals. Now, the other issue you have is you're literally just supporting feedlot factory farming. So do you want to be a part of that? I don't. So literally my fridge is full of 100% grass-fed, pasture-raised animals. I know the farmer, I've toured the farm, it's here in Tennessee. I can drive to him in 40 minutes, right? So anyway, that's a quick breakdown. I'll have to give you a link to other AMAs where we've covered that, but it's very, very important. What else we got? I want to hear more about the difference between. I have so much guilt for not being, I mean, here's the thing, Jessica, right? So yes, toxins are stored in fat, absolutely. So here's the thing to remember. If you can't do it, okay? So I don't like the carrying guilt idea. Get that out of your brain, right? Are your kids better off eating grain-fed beef than Cheerios and crackers and Fruit Loops and Lucky Charms and bowls of fruit? Yes, they absolutely are, okay? At the end of the day, they are better off with that. But there's also a great podcast that Rob Wolf just put out about something called estrogenics, like the amount of estrogen. It's like if you get a feedlot chicken, one chicken breast can have the same amount of estrogen as 5 birth control pills. One chicken breast, 5 birth control pills. That's how many hormones are stored in these animals' fats and their muscle. It's their muscle cells too. It's not just fat. So I hate that there's guilt there, but again, you have a boatload of kids. You know, you got to feed those kids. It's really tough. I mean, that's aside from like, I don't know, finding a way to just make astronomically more money. You know, it's tough. Or looking into CSAs or something like that, just trying to figure it out. I know that it's tough. This is a real problem. The only reason why feedlot factory farming exists is because of this right here. Because animal protein is the most expensive products in the grocery store, literally, and they have the lowest profit margins. They literally have the lowest profit margins for food manufacturers. So you combine lowest profit margins with highest expense, which means people don't want to buy them and they don't make profit on them anyway. Why would a company like Tyson or Purdue or any of these people start looking to increase their cost of production by switching to something like feedlot, like grass-fed or pasture-raised? It doesn't make sense, okay? So this is a real issue here. Do grains cause acid reflux in humans? Yes, 150%. There's literally nothing, the grains thing, like I can't even wrap my head around it. Like I can't understand that anybody puts these things in their mouth. I really can't. Like we talk about it all the time, like glucose and insulin, right? In terms of obesity and inflammation, glucose is the number one for inflammation, right? So you have inflammation levels correlate with glucose levels, and then you have glycemic index, right? So let's talk about glycemic index. Here's your glucose, right? Glycemic index is the spike in glucose, right? Glycemic load is, let's say there's another spike. Glycemic load is how long this lasts, how long it takes for your blood glucose to get back down to normal, right? The worst offenders on planet Earth are grains. Corn, probably the worst. Whole wheat has a 100 glycemic index. It has the highest possible glycemic index. I think potatoes are like 104 glycemic load. It's like corn, potatoes, wheat, whole wheat, rice, brown rice, all these things. They're the worst possible offenders, period. And they are massively inflammatory. So yes, I'm certain that carries into breastfed babies. It must, it absolutely has to, because these things are stored in fat. What is breast milk? Mostly fat. It's the same thing as drinking milk from a feedlot cow. Would you feed your baby milk from a feedlot cow that's fed grains? Nope. So should you feed your baby milk that is from a human who's eating a lot of grains, which we are not designed to eat the same way that cows are not designed to eat them? Think about that. That's a big deal. My son chews sweet potatoes tonight at the grocery store on his own for a dinner side. Hell yeah, that's awesome. Big win. Fat stores toxins, why no cheese? I talked about this, dude. Mike, did you watch this video? Would you come in? Are you watching The Bachelorette or something? Not watching the video? We just talked about feedlot. Organ beets are not very expensive. Yes, that's a really good point. Is in terms of this expense, we're talking about like, steaks or ground beef or chicken breasts. Everybody wants boneless, skinless, all these things, right? You can get chicken livers for like $1. You can get beef livers, very, very cheap. It's just a lot of people don't love them. They don't really like them. The name of the grass-fed place in Tennessee is literally Tennessee Grass-Fed. TennesseeGrassFed.com. They are fantastic, amazing. I had it today. I had it a couple hours before AMA time. All right, grains, grass-fed. Share your farmer info. Yeah, that's Tennessee Grass-Fed. That's it right there. I'm in Mount Julia area, and they deliver to Nashville twice a week. They're fantastic. It's literally TennesseeGrassFed.com. Yeah, that's why I don't even touch chicken. Yeah, me neither. What else we got? Tennessee Grass-Fed. Yep, that's it. I used to have heartburn right after eating toast. Yeah, absolutely. It's insane. These things are horrible for you. They're absolutely horrible for you. We're not designed to eat them. We're not designed to eat them. Cows are not designed to eat them. It's very bad. Okay? What else we got here? What time are we looking at? Man, where's my cursor again? I lost it. Okay. Where is my clock? 9:12. Not too bad, guys. We've been going 90 minutes on these things and flying through them. So another thing that I want to talk about, just to give this guy props, is I found out about him 2 days ago. Rob Wolf talked about him on his Instagram. Rob Wolf's a buddy of mine. He's a great guy. Look up all of Rob Wolf's work, especially Wired to Eat, best-selling book. It's fantastic. Explains this carbohydrate issue that I talk about all the time, glycemic index, all these things. He introduced me to a guy named Ted Naiman. And Ted Naiman is a doctor, and he has a website. I can't remember his website. I'll put it in the show notes. But his name's Ted Naiman. He's like, I found this guy 2 days ago, and it must be like how overweight Clovis people feel like when they find me. They're like, this is my guy. He speaks my language. He's like the only dude I've found that like speaks my language. Him and Rob. It's fantastic. But Ted Naiman is fantastic. He talks about this protein energy thing. The guy's freaking great. Last name is Naiman. Ted Naiman, he's awesome. His Instagram is hilarious. He makes really funny memes and stuff. He's super cool. So it's just, I mean, I hate to say it this way, but like, I get peppered with so many questions and so much bullshit that it's so nice to find a doctor like him who's like, hey, protein is really important. That should probably be a primary macronutrient. I can't tell you, I have never gotten more grief of anything than the fact that I tell people to eat 30% of their daily calories from protein. You would think I am telling people to drink gasoline. That is the kind of pushback that I get, right? And to see a doctor as well respected as this guy, who's saying the same things that I've been saying to you guys for 29 weeks, the same thing that I've been saying to you guys since 2015, when I first launched the Perfect Paleo Powder, it feels pretty damn good. I'm not gonna lie to you, because I have a hard time finding any influencers who understand this shit at this level. It's really, really tricky. It really is. People just don't get the whole story. They find a camp and they stick to it. It's insane. Going to see your doctor tomorrow. Yes! That is Dr. Eric Potter at Sanctuary Functional Medicine. He is awesome. I had a call with him on Monday. But again, functional medicine, expensive as shit. It's brutal. What else we got? Making bone broth to supplement the fact for us mamas cannot afford grass-fed meats. Cheaper. Yeah, again, I mean, but you're getting some amino acids. Bone broth is really important. It's great for gut health and things like that, but you can't really compare bone broth to eating meat, you know? But I see what you're saying. Yes, super important. Bone broth is great for gut health. What else we got? Anybody else? If we don't have more questions, we're going to shut it down. AMA number 29, Clovis Is Not Keto. I hope you guys understand the difference between these things now. Hope you guys learned a lot. There was a lot of sciencey terms in there. You might have to go back and listen. Might have to go back and take some notes. If you don't have any questions, we'll probably wrap this thing up. Be a little bit earlier than usual, which is really cool. I'm behind on the podcast. I'm gonna get the podcast up. Number 28 will be up. It's ready. The show is edited. It's ready to go. Ready to go for sure. And this podcast I'll try to put out either tomorrow, Friday, something like that. But I have a talk at Warner Music downtown in Nashville, giving a nutrition talk there. I'll probably talk about the gas tank analogy and insulin and glucose and all those things and what Clovis is. So anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. AMA number 29. Mind is exhausted, I'm sure. Yeah, that was a lot to take in. I know that. So if you have any questions, hit me up. Everything on social is The Clovis Culture, facebook.com/The Clovis Culture. You can join in on the Clovis Academy, facebook.com/groups/Clovis Academy. That's free and private. Just enter in, I'll accept you. You're in the Clovis Academy, you can see the transformations. For all things Clovis, okay? Remember this. If you want any further, Mike, to answer your question, this is every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central. This time, every single week. So you can go to clovis.store. This is where everything lives. Clovis.store. Oops. Clovis.store, okay? And then you can also go to Clovis, here, let's write it again a little neater, .store/AMA. And that's where you can find every single AMA I've ever done, all 29 of them. Again, this blog post will go up probably tomorrow or Friday. They'll have full show notes and resources. If you want to talk to Dr. Ted Naiman, any of that stuff, I can leave you all the show notes, resources. If you guys want links to studies, let me know. If you do, if you're gonna read them, be honest with me, because I feel like most people don't read studies, and if you don't want to, it's a lot of work to do these show notes and resources. So just let me know. And yeah, clovis.store/AMA. You can find all my ebooks. You can find all the lifestyle coaching, custom plan for I Am Clovis. You can find Clovis Kids, all those things. Help me out. Go buy something nice. Get the Perfect Paleo Powder, okay? Check that out. What else you got? Thanks for the science. Thanks for getting the nitty gritty. Live every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Central. Follow Ted Naiman on Instagram. Awesome. He's a total badass. Follow him. Please help Mike understand Facebook Live. Yeah, I think we just did. All right. We're all good, guys. This is AMA number 29. Clovis is not keto. Go back, watch this one more, and watch it again. Take notes, all these things. I think you're going to like it. Jessica, go back a little bit. I already wrote Dr. Naiman on the board, so go back to that. And yeah, thank you guys very much. This is Justin Nault, founder, CEO, Clovis, AMA number 29. Clovis is not keto. Signing off until next week. If you are in the groups, I am Clovis, Clovis Kids. I'll see you tomorrow morning for the live videos and the manifestos. If you don't know what I'm talking about, get in there. Clovis.store. Go see what's up. Thank you guys so much. Justin Nault. Good night.